Good afternoon, everybody. It's been a wonderful morning full of interesting presentations from our science colleagues, our education enforcement colleagues, and the leaders of the VFA. Now time this afternoon to hear from recreational fishers. Before I introduce our next guest speaker, I just want to remind you about a social media competition we've got going on at the moment. So there's an opportunity to win 4 Trellies vouchers today simply by posting on our social media platforms. Make sure you include the reference hashtag conference 2022 so we can find them. We're going to pick the best 4 posts that include the hashtag conference 2022 and they'll be announced at the end of the day. Happy posting. And a second reminder, any questions that you have, please just do the QR code on the table. There's a couple that come in at the moment. I'll just read out the first one. This is from Chris Padovani of the VFA. Oh, this is a statement. The MC is doing an amazing job today. Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate that. Then we have a second one here from a Travis Dowling of the VFA that says, significant room for improvement from the MC. So we're getting some really good, valuable feedback in, and I really appreciate all your comments and look forward to some of your questions this afternoon. Next up, we have Kate Norman, who's going to come and give us a presentation all about solo fishing tips for cod and winter night fishing. Kate is the cod whisperer, I believe. Kate, looking forward to hearing all about your presentation. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Kate, and as said before, we'll just be speaking about solo fishing trips for cod and also winter night fishing. So preparation is key. Preparation for solo fishing trips start far before you get on the water. Thomas will actually go into this further in his presentation, which is after me. The more prepared you are, the more successful you'll be. So make sure all of your gear is really well looked after. Always upgrade all of our trebles, split rings, check your leaders, change them regularly, and also make sure that nothing is failing. When you're trying to catch one of these fish, if something is going to fail, if something's going to go wrong, it will go wrong with one of these big cod. Minimise your setup time on the water. So before you get out on the water, make sure your lures are on, reels and rods are ready to go, and also be confident. Be ready to take a photo of that fish. So make sure your GoPro and your camera is charged, ready to go, and set up before you even start fishing. So when I get out on the water, I'll spend some time in the boat just getting everything set up, rods and reels on the deck ready to go, and also your GoPro and your camera there set up. Winter fishing, which is what I really enjoy doing. You can see here by the swag set up in the boat, that's what I love. It does get really cold, obviously. I tend to wear a freezer suit, which goes down to, I think, minus 20 degrees, which is fantastic for those cold nights at Eildon. Obviously gloves, also those hot hand warmers that you can use, they're fantastic. The warmer you are, the longer you can stay out on the water and enjoy the fishing. If you're going to do an evening session and it turns out to be a really good session, put the swag in the boat. You can always just roll it out like up there and just stay the night if you are that keen. Do your homework. When you get to the lake or the river or wherever you're going to fish, I tend to arrive, if I'm planning a night fishing session, arrive a few hours before you want to start fishing. You can use an app like Charted Waters or even use your Google Maps just to check out the area and make a bit of a plan of where you're going to start and where you're going to finish. When I tend to get there, I will, as I said, arrive a bit earlier, then use your side and down scan to assess any of the structure, your shelves, your plateaus. And I also use Garmin LiveScope just to try and find out where all the bait fish are holding, and then you're all set up to chase those cod when it does get, when the sun does go down. Make a bit of a plan. When I've got my rods and reels set up, I'll always have a smaller and also a big profile lure ready to go, and also something that goes a bit deeper with some chin weights on and shallow swimming lures as well. During this daylight before the sun goes down, I'll tend to check out an area and work out how thick the structure is, what sort of trees, bushes are there. Are they dense? Are they more spindly? You may, if they're really dense, especially when it's night, want to cast sort of parallel to the area. If you find some really good weed beds, you might want to throw sort of a surface lure over the top or a more shallow swimming lure over the top just to draw out any of those fish during the night. It can be really difficult fishing at night, and a lot of people ask me what I do in terms of lighting. I wear a headlamp but only turn it on once I've actually hooked that fish. Before the sun goes down, check out all the silhouettes of the trees. It sounds really silly, but if you're in a bit of an inlet, you can find the main trees, and if there's a bit of a moonlight that night, you can use them as markers when you are then travelling along then at night fishing. The more landmarks you know, the more confident you can be with your casting too, and the less lures you'll have ending up in trees. We don't want that. I tend to make a bit of a run, so there'll be sort of a 300-400 metre stretch, and I'll look and assess that run in the daylight, so before it gets night, and work out those markers, as I said before, so you know where you're going, you know where you plan to fish. Do that run, it may take an hour or two to get from the start to the finish, and it may be just one side of the bay or an inlet or the whole way around. If you see a lot of action, there's a lot of bait fish or bigger fish swimming around, you can always go back and repeat that run. If there's not a lot of action there, you can then move on to the next run. So if you've done your homework during the day, you might have sort of 2 or 3 runs that you're prepared to do that night, depending how they're all fishing, and that can change sort of trip by trip. Eildon is a huge lake. It can be really overwhelming, and I know the first few times that I went out there, you tend to try and fish the whole lot, which is impossible. Pick one spot and get to know it really well. There's big fish holding throughout that entire lake. So if you do start to find an area that you'll know where the snags are, the structure is, and where those big fish are holding. I tend to find too, fishing at night on my own, it can be quite dangerous, especially if you're trying to fly from one area of the lake to another. There's lots of sort of floating trees and things like that you might hit. So if I'm at night on my own, I'll only go from sort of run to run, which it doesn't have to be too far from the boat ramp at all. So boat setup. You want everything within arm's reach. If you're on your own and you do hook one of these big fish, you don't want to be trying to find your net, trying to find your brag mat, trying to find a camera. Everything needs to be within arm's reach because of the weight of these fish and the way that they fight. It's not as easy as being able to move them from the front to the back of the boat. So we'll be fishing from the front of the boat, right up the front. Once you're hooked, you want to be able to reach back and grab your net. So I always have my net in the exact same position as you can see up here. You can just grab the handle as soon as you've got that fish. You can also see in the front of that console there, I've got all my pliers, I've got a glove sitting there ready to go, anything else that I might need. You've got your brag mat right up the front ready to go too. So the priority at all times is the health of these really big fish. So we want to minimise the time that they spend out of the water. As soon as you do hook one of them, you can then get them in the net. So you grab your net. You can give the fish a break at the side of the boat, so there's not a rush to get it into the boat. So the good thing about these big gold Wilson nets is that they're really stretchy. Once you get it in that net, you can actually lean it on the side of the boat and the fish will still be in the water. Gives the fish a bit of a break, a bit of a chance to recover. When the fish is sitting in the water, in the net, I tend to just stand on the side of the handle, which just balances it. And then I can reach back, turn the GoPro on, turn the camera on, and also headlamp on, ready to go, and get your brag mat and everything ready. So when the fish is on the deck of the boat, it's spending the minimum time in the boat. Also, when you are retrieving these fish and trying to get them to the boat, as I said, it can be quite hard to get them to where you want. They do tend to fight quite hard. When you're on your own, you've also got to get them to the edge of the boat, but also in the net on your own, which is easier said than done. You will need to retrieve them to that perfect point where their head's about a foot under the water. With one hand, you've got your rod in, so your left hand. You're lifting their head up. With your right hand, you've got your net and scooping them in. Getting them in the net on your own can be quite difficult, but if you do it properly, obviously it'll pay off. If something goes wrong, like you do end up tapping the lure on the side of the net or something like that, you have the potential of losing a really good fish, and that's heartbreaking. Trust me, I've done it. And as I said, have your GoPro and camera mount set up ready to go. As you can see there, I've got the GoPro in the middle of the boat on the console with a light underneath. I tend to use one of those little octopus tripods with my phone as well, just on that side console, so you can get some photos with your phone and the GoPro at the same time. And as I said, if everything's set up ready to go, you remember it's night time, so you don't want to be fumbling around trying to find things. And it's the time that you need something and it's not put in the right place that it makes it really difficult. So if you do need your pliers or anything else, they're all just within arm's reach. These are 2 fish from a session that I had at Eildon. It was probably in October, November last year. This was a really good session. This is probably my favourite session that I've had at Eildon so far. And the main thing is that I tend to try and make the most of my time off work. It'd be really nice with fishing if you could pick the time where the weather's perfect, the moon's perfect, the pressures are ideal and things like that. That doesn't always happen. So last year, in these photos, I was actually 6 or 7 months pregnant. So the days that I didn't have morning sickness and felt okay and I wasn't working, I'd tend to hook the boat up and go out to Eildon for a quick session. These 2 fish came from a night session. I decided at the last minute, probably about 3 o'clock, to head out there, hook the boat up. That first fish on the left went just over a metre, and that was caught at about sort of 9:30 at night, so I was pretty excited getting that in the boat on my own. Rang my partner Brendan straight away and told him how excited I was to get a fish like that, and he went, okay, that's great, pack up the boat, come home. Like, you're a couple of hours away from home, that's enough. And it was at that point that I told him that I had put the swag in the boat and I wasn't finished fishing yet. And within an hour, I had that second fish on the right in the boat, which was pretty exciting, and rang him back quickly to tell him that. I did end up hooking a third fish for that night. It was about half an hour after that one on the right, and I lost it at the side of the boat, which probably didn't help. I think I was open-mouth breathing by then. I was pretty puffed from pulling that other one in. But that was an epic session at Eildon in one night. And that was part of, there were 5 fish over a metre that were landed within a 6 weeks period. So I managed to do about 4 sessions up at Eildon in that time to get those 5 fish. So at the end of the day, we all fish because we love doing it. I personally really love the challenge of catching these amazing fish, and we do it just to take a quick photo as shown up in there, and then watching them swim away. Fish in the middle of winter, which, as I said before, is what I'm passionate about and what I really enjoy. Fishing in winter and at night can be one of the most mentally and physically demanding things that I've ever done, and the perseverance and the effort that goes into catching these fish mean that it is much more rewarding when you finally get them on the deck of the boat. And if you do take care of all those 1%ers, as I said, that Thomas will talk about later on as well, and you do manage to hook one of these fish of a lifetime, it's less likely that something's going to go wrong. Luck does have a huge amount to do with it, but you'll find the more time and effort that you put into it, the luckier you'll tend to be. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks, Kate. That was really informative to hear all your tips and all the 1%ers, and it's really quite impressive that you've been fishing for most of your life, but really only been targeting Murray cod for the last 5 years. So to go from learning how to fish for Murray cod to winter fishing and night fishing is pretty impressive. Our next speaker is Thomas Pinter. Thomas is born and raised in Melbourne and spends every possible chance he can to camp and be around the banks of the Murray River. At a young age, he was chasing Murray cod with his dad and brothers, and he quickly adopted lure fishing and only investing every chance he gets to chase the dream and now chase those big fish for points. He's also a 2-time Mulwala Classic winner. It's pretty impressive.
G'day guys, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Starting off, like much of what was said already, not just chasing big fish and chasing it for a passion, but doing it in a tournament scenario as well can be a little bit daunting, because not just chasing big fish as much as you can, but trying to find a happy medium between finding numbers of fish. So it also obviously just plays a bit more of a a bit of a strategic aspect to it, not just going out and trying to catch big fish, which is great, but it can also waste a lot of time, so you have to find that happy medium. So there's a few things that I do to help overcome those little problems that you can occur on the water, whether it be, say, Mulwala now with the heavy weed, heavy downpours and dirty water. It helps pre-fishing or fishing when you're not in your element, like going out of your comfort zone, fishing when the weather's bad, it's raining sideways. Obviously be careful in the thunderstorm, but when those conditions aren't in your favour and still pulling result is what matters. So it's all good and well to go fishing when the moon lines up for you, your barometer, there's a storm front coming, getting out there going for a fish, but go out there when the barometer's rock bottom and least favourable and still pulling a result is much more satisfying. And not just going out because you've got the things lining up, but you've got the day free, still get out there and give it a crack. So there's a few things that I'm going to touch on with this. So, this thing works. Exploring, definitely a few things that Kate said, picking a couple 100 metre bit of water definitely helps. Lake Ewan's a great example. It's such a big waterway, but if you start breaking it down, literally if you had the map in front of you and start analysing it, where the arms are, where the banks are, where's breaking it down to the point where you have where's the long points with timber, banks without timber, rock walls, breaking all those things down and then applying them to the time of year. So what I found personally through the summer months, the fish can be a bit more temperamental with higher water temperatures, obviously boat traffic being a bit of an issue, causing a bit more dirty water lines coming off the open barren points. So for me personally, in summer I found a lot more of the fish being more active in those low light periods, so through the night, first thing in the morning. But then there's also a lot of times where people get off the water, that midday period can have some of the hottest fishing. So this fish here actually, I was actually with my dad, and this was one of 3 fish. We started fishing at 5 a.m, didn't get a bite till 2, and soon after releasing this fish, pulled 2 more fish within the hour. We had jet skis, wake boats all around us. It's going to be a little bit hard keeping your feet in steady feet with those waves coming past, but there's definitely the rewards out there. So, because if you're going to find a fish out there that's moving around, he's there to move for a feed. He's not just a lot of the fish won't be resident fish; they'll be moving. So, back like I said about picking banks and trying to figure it out, because as big as it is, and you break the lake down, picking an arm and not leaving it the whole session, or for instance, if you've got a chance to get out there for a weekend, dedicate yourself to a section of the lake and don't leave it. You'll get yourself very familiar with it, and you'll know through the process of the day, early morning, say, throwing your surface lures, because it's most productive at first thing in the morning, and then you start exploring and going deeper with, say, swim bait, or maybe throwing a big spinnerbait through the course of the day, and then obviously the afternoon. Personally, I like to go work my way from deep and work my way back up to the top again. But after the weekend's fishing or that session, and you've full covered that arm or bit of bank, top to bottom, you'll start to know where at the mid-retrieve you'll anticipate a bush or a big wattle tree coming up to your lure, you're about to touch it. Like, you'll get that familiar when you know where every log is. And especially going there, making the effort to go there, probably when the water's down. I take mental notes of what banks look like, because a lot of the time you have some flats or some rock walls taper off, and then there'll be a tree line, and where the tree line stops is usually a fall, which becomes a creek bed. And those are great points to chase, especially when that water comes up, the sun comes up, and you want to fish deep. Those edges, they're like little highways, because fish may not hunt as such in a spot, but they might be migrating from one point to the next, ready to feed on that next point. So they're not always going to eat, they're just preparing themselves to eat. Much like you go to your Macca's or whatever, you're on your way to go get a feed, fish do the same thing. I've had many cases where, actually I'll show you a bit of Lorraine's active target footage. I've got a bit of a screen recording there, which we'll see soon, of exactly what I was telling you about how the fish are moving between spots. And a lot of the time, like, people don't understand is the fish do sit in numbers. They're not all lone rangers. So this is a fish that was caught probably about a month ago now in Mulwala. This was one of those fish. I've seen it multiple times through the course of the morning. I ended up following it for close to a kilometre, and then when it got to this point in the river junction, it actually turned around and it was just doing big circles, big circle work, probably the space of about 50 to 100 metre circles. So originally it swam close to a K, and then it started pulling up and doing circles. So it was obviously there for a reason. And the photo doesn't do justice, but it was really windy. And the young gentleman there holding the fish was struggling to get the cast where it needed to be. And I just said, hey, do you reckon I can have a cast? And that was, took it straight away. That fish was actually being conservative because the mat was only a metre 30 mat, and that fish was easy, like 40, 50 below the end. So I can't put a number on it, but metre 32, metre 33, and had a stab. It was north of 90 pound. So, not going to say too much for this one, but just getting in the water. A lot of people, it's actually sad to see. I had 2 weeks ago a gentleman caught his first metre fish and yahooing and carrying on a bit too much in the water. Fish was sadly sitting sunbaking on the deck, and the gentleman let the fish go, and then he drove off, and I actually followed that fish with active target, and I was seeing that fish come belly up, which is pretty sad to see, but I spent the time with it in the water. I actually got tape out on this one. This was a metre 17, this one. And I spent close to 2 hours with it and eventually got it off, swimming away. Followed it with the active target for about 20 minutes after that. And then, it come good. So just a bit of fish care. This wasn't actually supposed to be in the talk, but it's something I just wanted to bring across to you guys. If you're spending so much time and money on these fish and you finally get it, don't just blow it over, just go back to the camp and tell your mates. Spend the time and do what it takes. Now, the big talk in the fishing cod world is live imagery. It's come up probably in the last 12 months, really big. It's been around probably for like 3 or so years now, but there's definitely pros and cons about it. I know a lot of people call it cheating to an extent, or some people say, I don't need that, which you don't. I definitely wouldn't recommend going out there and just grabbing it if you haven't experienced it first, because you'll miss out on learning a lot of points. For example, the pros, fishing a high percentage water, you're cutting out the hunting of where do I start. Pretty much just start, put it in the water, and what it does, it'll pretty much give you feedback on bait. You can even pick up water clarity, the fish's behaviour, and reading the bait behaviour, knowing if you're on the correct bait. Efficient use of time. This all ties into it because you're fishing more efficiently. Instead of going up, say for argument's sake, going to Eildon for a weekend and you fishing a bit of water that you have all the confidence in fishing hard, but in actual fact it was pretty much barren. This sort of cuts it out where you know if you're doing the right things. It might be, okay, the fish are there and they're not biting, let's make a lure change or let's make a slight adjustment instead of wasting your time to an extent. So, but definitely the cons, you can see the fish like staring at the screen, and you pretty much, I know it's sad to say, but I've seen it on a lot of people standing and staring at a screen for the whole session, which, okay, catching fish, but honestly, you're still pulling fish that you don't see in structure. If there's a big root ball, I still pull my lure across the top of it, and the amount of fish that you see just arise out of it, a big root ball, you think it's actually part of a tree that's starting to come up. And there's these big fish that will bury themselves in the tightest of holes. So, but again, you'll see it in the up and coming footage. So, as you can see, that's a big meter cod there, that one there, on this big laydown, and there's actually a second one there. You'll see another one coming soon. You'll see that's a lure coming in, and the fish noticed it straight away and just went vertical straight down into the hole and nowhere to be seen again. Like, I came back an hour or two later and could not see a sign of life again. And I actually went back there when the water dropped and I seen this tree. I personally, myself, I would not even be able to crawl in that log. It was tiny. I don't even know how the fish fit in there to begin with. But just from the amount of fish that I've caught using this technology to going off the scale, that fish was easy, metre 5 to metre 10 sort of class fish. Now, just touching quickly about fishing, not just for the big fish, but for the points. It can be a bit hard because it's also a bit of a mental game too. There's a couple of people in here, Scullin, who have actually fished up against the Cod Nationals before, and actually I've got a bit of a memory where he was fishing with, I believe, Mick Miller, and we were side by side for about 200 metres apart, or probably 100 metres apart, and we went fish for about an hour. I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, probably 8 or 10 fish between us. And those boys managed to take it out that year. But it plays a bit of a mental game where you sort of need to pick the time when you want to chase certain fish, not just going out there and catching them or the size. It actually comes to the point where you sort of need to commit to an area or time, because you could be wasting time driving between spots too. Time is a massive issue. Critical element, because there's so many times 5 minutes before end of comp time we've pulled 3-4 fish and they've been the actual winners of the competition, being tied first and then close to calling it because you've had enough, and then 5 minutes before you've got to go, or the end of the comp time, pulling 3 fish that actually won us that first year, and then backed it up with my dad the following year with similar scenario. From Pav Out Lures, we were tied first, and again came down to the last hour and we pulled one fish that was just legal size and enough to take the check. So big part of the tournament fishing, a lot of the work happens off the water. Gear organisation's a huge one. Keeping on top of your leader knots, your leader, your main line, even the eyelets on your guides. I check mine thoroughly at least every year, or if I've knocked the tip against something, because there's been times where I got let down and it hurt the most. I had a hairline fracture in my line when it nicked it while I was fighting a big fish. I'm very meticulous in servicing my gear and my boat itself. It might be something small, but like the servicing your outboard, just making sure everything is running smooth, because this day and age not everyone gets to get out there as much or whenever they want, so you just want the least amount of flaws or things getting in your way. Just want to enjoy yourself, and with it, when it comes to a tournament situation, you don't have any room for error. It sort of ties into the time management when I was saying before, picking your strategy going into the water, going out on the water, dedicating time to chase big fish, but then also dedicating time to get those numbers on the board. I did that at Nationals every day. I dedicated 2 hours of throwing the biggest lure I could, whether it be 250 or 300 mil long, just chasing that big bite to get those bonus points. I was prepared to sacrifice a bit of time, but there was a big reward involved. So it was real hit and miss, but it paid off. Pre-fishing, came out to a tournament. I've actually got Cod Nationals coming up mid-next month, mid-March. Since Cod Open, every second weekend I've been out of Mulwala, even if I can get out there for an hour or two, and constantly just fishing new water, exploring new stuff, not just going back to your old faithful. Keep that in your back pocket, go explore and find some new stuff. Get out of your comfort zone. And what I was telling you about also about fishing in those conditions when it's not in your favour. Water's dirty, don't use that as an excuse. Get out there and do it. Like, it might be just simple lure change or different tactic. Instead of winding a swim bait up higher, run it down deep. Or, I know it sounds stupid, I've even caught some fish. A great example, my last trip to Catelyn, nearly everyone in the accommodation, the resort, was saying, "Oh, the bite's tough," and I'd never been there, and I thought I just wouldn't accept me driving all that way to accept not catching a fish, or letting people get into my ears saying, "Oh, the fishing's tough, oh, the barometer's crap." Like, you've got to get out there, and it got to the point where I was marking fish down at 12 metres of water, and I actually tied a paternoster rig with a teardrop sinker, a 2 ounce on a paternoster, and I was running a swim bait off the paternoster and just slow rolling that sinker along the bottom, and I kept my swim bait about 2 foot off the bottom, and that's right where the fish were. And on one hot session we actually pulled 6 fish, nothing under 80 centimetres, and it got to the point where people back at the cabin didn't really believe us, and they caught onto it, went out in the same technique, and the next day and they caught a fair few fish themselves. So that was something that was come up on the spur of the moment, and mind you, there was no technology involved to even then marking drop-offs, having line wrapped around a Coke bottle with a sinker and throwing it over when you mark the drop-off, just so when you're sitting off it in the main lake and there's no structure around you, it gives you something to aim at, something to work off. Just little things like that, just thinking more practical with your presentation, your boat positioning. Don't accept the fishing being too hard. There's always a way. I refuse. There's actually something my dad always told me is, don't accept being beaten. Be beaten by the fish. Don't be beaten by the other elements, because what actual fact is, you're beating yourself. You're putting yourself down. To just get out there and get over. A lot of it's a mental game more than anything else. So that comes under the point of discipline. Then how bad do you want it? I know this photo's caught a bit of an uproar. Like, that fish was caught on a 16-inch swim bait, and it was just over a pound in weight. This was actually 3 weeks ago, this fish. I just want to touch on, just because a lot of the focus on today has been on Eildon, and this fish was actually one of 4 encountered, and those fish, I don't know if it was the same ones, but on this one particular bank, multiple times I've been seeing big fish, and just not getting a reaction. So I knew something had to be done. Like, it just changed something up. It got to the point where I was running 2 swim baits on the one rig, like piggybacked off each other, just to create like a bit of a bait ball situation. And I started getting interest from fish. And then I started throwing something like this on the first session, being over 400 mil long. These big fish couldn't say no. If they didn't eat it, they were right up it and chasing it. Like before, when you've seen the big cod swimming along the laydown, I had that a few times right up behind the lure, and they either committed or they showed interest, like heavy interest, to the point I thought it was going to get eaten. So these are fish that otherwise turn their noses up at everything. So I don't know, wrap it up there. Thank you guys for having me. Really appreciate it, and yeah.
Thanks, Thomas. That was great. And just to give a quick heads up to Kate and yourself, the questions in regards to recreational fishing are coming in thick and fast. So look forward to the Q&A panel session up here a little bit later on. Our next guest speaker, his official name, or his birth name, is John Fyfe, but some of you may know him as Harry Wanderer. John's going to come up and tell us all about 400 hours worth of fishing last season, that he caught and released 71 Murray cod, 61 that were over 80 centimetres, and 28 that were over a metre. Pretty impressive, John. Welcome.
G'day everybody. Basically, I get asked a lot why I bait fish, why I don't lure fish. Well, a big part of the reason is I've got a spinal condition that stops me consistently casting. But if that got any better, I reckon I'd probably stick with the bait fishing now. Some of the things that I get to experience and the memories that I've got. Being able to take my grandkids out for a day fishing and catch big cod. To watch my daughter catch her first ever Murray cod. The excitement on her face. Or my son get his first meatery. And you're standing right there with him, as that's fantastic. You know, I get to take friends out that I only catch up with once every 12 months, and we get to sit and talk and catch up and catch good cod at the same time. You know, the photo there, what is it, bottom left, I took a mate and his 12-year-old son, and to watch a double hookup at exactly the same time, one each, and to land a metre fish and one in the 900s was just absolutely amazing. You know, the last few years, as there's been a lot of fantastic memories that I've got. I've taken 14 people fishing with me, 13 of them have joined the meter club, and I've got to experience that. And sometimes it's, to me anyway, I love to watch somebody else beside me catch a great fish. It's just as good as what it is catching my own fish. And this guy here, he was a mentor to me throughout life. He would drop whatever he was doing if I was in trouble and come and give me advice. And I got to take him at 80 years old. And that fish there he caught, it was 93 centimetres. He was the 14th guy. He didn't get to join the meter club, but still, to give that little bit back to somebody that was so important to me and to watch the joy on his face, and in his words, to have caught the biggest bloody fish I've ever caught in my life, was just, you know, a fantastic day. But along with the memories with the people, when you're Clearwater bait fishing in the Clearwater, some of the experiences you get to see are what I call once in a lifetime experiences. You know, there one day I was fishing and there was about a 5 metre area before the drop off, and out 5 metres it was maybe 500 mil deep. And I'm just winding in a fish I've hooked, and when I got him he went 85, but as I'm winding him in, right behind him is a bigger cod. And that bigger cod just followed him all the way to my feet. And when I got him to my feet, I just pulled the tip of the rod up and held pressure on the one on the line. And to watch the bigger cod do a complete 180 circle, open his mouth and completely engulf the whole head of the 85 in 300 ml of water and watch it in crystal clear was just absolutely amazing. And then to top the day off about an hour later, that bigger fish comes swimming in across the shallows, about a metre in front of me, probably 300 mil deep of water, just kept going across and back out into the deep. And I thought, he might do another circle, he might come back. So I picked me right up and I wound it into the drop-off, just right on the edge of the drop-off. It was only 4 or 5 minutes later, I was looking for him this time, and here he comes, you know, and he was probably 6 metres out on a 45 degree to me. Give me time, and I just picked me right up. As I slowly wound it in, kept the bait under the water, and as he come in, he was about 2 metres from it, and he started to turn, and when he started to turn, I just stopped, and I could see the bait, and it just floated down like a feather, down to the bottom, and he swam over to it. He got about 200 mil from it and he stopped and he was crossways to the current, and I sat there and watched him, I reckon, between 3 and 4 minutes. And the current, well, probably a bit of his own movement, slowly moved him around until he was perfectly in line with the current, but still 200 mil from the bait. And I watched him open his mouth no further than 30 mil, and that bait picked up and just sucked straight in. I hooked him and he went 95, and I suggested it be the same fish that engulfed the first fish's head. You know, to be sitting beside my brother-in-law and watch a fish come through the shallows like that, and him to hook it. We watched the fish for 6 metres through this shallow area. Wasn't fast, but he just cruised in, and the whole time you're excited, what's he going to do? What's he going to do next, you know? And then he just come in and took the bait, bang, got him, landed him. You know, he was about 97, beautiful fish. You know, that fella there, he's one of my favourite fish. If I go to there, that bait there, you can see how close to the edge of the water it is. You don't need deep water to catch a Murray cod. I actually caught a fish with my bait placed there, 50 mil from the edge of the water, and the actual top of the bait was out of the water. And I was sitting there, I hadn't had a bite for 2 or 3 hours, and all of a sudden, I just, again, caught something move out of the corner of my eye and looked down, and that particular fish there, he come hooking in, grabbed the bait on his way through, and his pectoral fin was actually past the water line up on the dry. He had 2 big flips and ended up back in the water. But I'd already seen him do it once because he actually, and that's why I put my bait there, is because I'd cast out and a piece of bait had discarded, come off the main bait, and that's where it landed. And I watched him come in and take it, and I thought, well, I'm going to put my bait there, and sure enough, he come back and did it again, and ended up with a beautiful fish, you know. And when there's only a metre of line on the end of your rod, do they go mad? There's fight. That's a fish that, I know, well, that's a bloody good fish, really. But to catch fish like that, bait fishing, you've got to have patience. Some days you'll pull up and you'll have a fish in 3 or 4 minutes, and other days you'll have days like, basically, you know, days like that. That day there, I'd sat for 13 and a half hours in the same hole without a bite. In 5 minutes before I left, he took it. I ended up with a 1.7 metre cod. Now, he was a good cod, but what he did, he made the whole 13 and a half hours well and truly worthwhile. Along with having the patience, one of the things you'll find with having patience is after you don't get a bite for 2 or 3 hours, your concentration levels tend to drop. And you start looking around and you're just waiting. That's the time one of these fellas is going to grab you, and there's a hell of a good chance, if you're not ready, he's going to take your rod, unless you've got it fairly well secured. So that's a part of a text message I got from one of my mates. He's a pretty good fisherman, and he's into it, but caught a lot of cod. I won't mention his name, but I reckon his personal best is about 132. Is that right, Trav? Now, you know, a lot of yous will have your ways of securing your rod, and there's a lot of different ways to do it. But for the you guys out there that are using those custom-made timber rod holders, I'd probably suggest a starting point. So those rod holders there, as you can see, I believe they're designed as a beach rod holder for the big long rods to stick way up in the air to get the line out over the waves, but I use them like that. And when the fish bites, it jams the top of the handle and the bottom of the handle, and it gives you a lot of time. You know, I've actually had that rod at the ground level bent over to more than a 45-degree angle, and it still held onto the rod until I got to it. You know, so that's just a starting point for you guys. Those $9 fishing rod holders have probably saved me $4,000 or $5,000 worth of rods. And the only thing I'd suggest is don't catch your personal best as your first ever fish, because you tend to watch everyone else consistently get the excitement and the joy as they go up and up and up and up. And you, for some reason, you keep being disappointed because you just tend to miss out on it over and over and over again. That's a picture of my ute, a picture of my boat. Nothing to do with the story, I just love showing everybody. On a serious note, if you see the ute parked along the side of the road or see me out in the boat, please never be afraid to come over and have a chat. I'll have more time and I can rave on a hell of a lot more and maybe give you a couple of tips to help you catch your first matery. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. That was very, very good, and definitely a better job than I'm doing in regards to getting a few laughs out of everybody. I just wanted to take the opportunity at the moment to invite a young fisher up here to ask a few questions. Normally when I do these sort of things, I rove around with a microphone and ask people to stand up and talk a little bit about themselves, but with COVID I'm not allowed to do this. So, young Julian, would you like to come up here? Let's give Julian a round of applause. So Juliet, how do you go with fishing? Do you like recreational fishing?
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah. What got you into fishing?
My dad. I've been fishing since I was very little.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And what do you like about it the most?
It's just really fun when you get a big fish and you feel like you've spent your time quite well and you feel like you've achieved something.
Do you ever go fishing with Dad and you catch all the fish and he doesn't?
Yeah, a few times.
Yeah. That's good. We like that story. Well, thanks very much for coming up. We've got a little present here for you. Sam Consolo, quite a few of you might know, runs a business called Solo Lures, and they're available on Facebook. Sam's a very humble guy and doesn't want a bit of a plug, but had to give him a plug anyway. He's kindly created this lure here, which we're going to give young Julian. Thanks very much for coming out today. Back on with the show and the presentations, and we're going to hear from another recreational fisher, avid recreational fisher, he tells me, Ben Scullin, who's the Executive Officer at VR Fish. When Ben's not behind the desk making sure that everyone can go fishing, he's an accomplished lure tournament fisher with international experience. Ben has a love of lure fishing for natives and competes in events such as the Mulwala Cod Nationals, which he won in 2019. Ben, welcome.
All right, wow, how do you follow the previous three speakers when all you're talking about is catching goldfish? And some business as well. All right, so thank you. It's an honour to be here. The Victorian Recreational Fishing Peak Body, your peak body. I'm the Executive Officer. A little bit about VR Fish and our advocacy across the pillars of habitat, water, access, best practice and promotion. And the interaction of where Murray cod fits with those pillars of advocacy. And in our 25-year history, we've had, very rarely are we alone in our advocacy, and success, you know, is a result of all of our group effort. But we lead the charge on things quite often and campaign, and we currently have campaigns going across a whole spectrum of fishing and even into our multicultural community, where we're communicating and campaigning in languages other than English now to the recreational fishing community. And when I thought about Murray cod and how that interacts with VR Fish's 25-year history and what it is that we've advocated for and been instrumental in leading the charge on, and our chair, Rob Loates, who's here today. This is a much younger Rob Loates, looking very svelte there, Loatesy. the importance of this photo with VR fish advocacy on Murray cod. And this is Loadsy stocking what I believe to be the first yearling Murray cod stocking in Victoria in 2003 into Kangaroo Lake, following the buyout of commercial fishing from freshwater lakes in Victoria. So I thought I'd give a quick list of things that VR fish led the charge on over our history. So the buyout of commercial freshwater access licences in 28 lakes, campaign to have the Kerrang Lake system, Kangaroo, Reedy number 1, and there was another one, and I can't remember. Restocked, phasing out amateur mesh netting, leading the charge on phasing out set lines, leading the charge on a priority species listing for Murray cod that increased the penalties. Regulatory change is something that we're always talking about, and this is a very limited list. You know, when I looked at it, Murray cod's, you know, obviously a big thing with recreational fishing advocacy and year-round Western Basin cod fishery. So you know, it's an interesting thing that some of the advocacy VR fish has affected your cod fishing today. Is the point I'm trying to make. Your peak body, you pay for us, and you know, our job is to deliver things that you want. So, you know, if you've got an idea for better cod fishing, better cod fisheries, you know, bring it up, talk to us, and let us advocate. And anyway, now to the good stuff. So, catching Murray cod with accuracy, you know, this is a very interesting thing, because following on from Kate Thomas and John's talks about, you know, monster hunting, I'm going to go the other way, and I'm going to say, you know, when I first fished a cod classic at Mulwala, I was already an accomplished lure tournament fisher, but in the bream and bass scene, and you know, super finesse stuff, estuarine fishing where, you know, you're always getting hits and there's always action, to fishing a cod classic with my friend Phil Smallman and the pre-fish and cod classic, and I didn't get a bite. You know, it just destroyed me, this fish. What is this cod? You know, fish of 1,000 casts. So from then to now, I thought I would just transfer across what I do really well, and that's throw small lures at big fish. And talk about how I won't go after the big fish, I'll catch them. We come across meteries quite often, but I'll spend my time winkling out 60s, 70s, 80s. Mostly for tournament fishing, you need the numbers, but also that's sort of what I like to do. So transferring that across to if you're new to cod fishing and you want to introduce someone to cod fishing, like kids especially, having them catch fish, that's a pretty important thing as well, because if you do what Phil Smallman did to me and fish for 4 days without getting a bite, you're going to put people off. So I'm going to say something controversial. Some of you might find it offensive. I fish for cod with spinning gear. This is not bait cast gear. This is about fishing with spinning gear. And ultimately, there's only 4 skills that you need to know about fishing for cod with spinning gear and being successful. I'm talking, you know, 15, 20 fish a day. The gear, I use very light spinning gear, 3 to 5 kilo. Mostly it's yellow belly gear. I'm throwing 80mm hard bodies. In fact, I throw one hard body the whole time. Depth, I'm normally less than 2 metres always. And the 4 really important skills that I would teach anyone are casting, learning how to cast properly. Once you learn how to cast, and that's a timing issue, just like golf, just like footy, it's timing. You need to cast accurately, and that's where you use your different types of casts, and that's practice. Practice in the backyard with a cup, putting a lure in a cup. If you can do it from 30 yards, you're going to win a cod nationals. Especially in cod, lure fishing rod tip control. So I'm going to learn how to cast accurately. Rod tip control is about 2 things. Mending the line. So if I'm casting to a stump and it's windy and I've got a massive amount of belly in the line, I'm going to want to mend that line so I get a straighter run on the lure. And then also steering the lure around things with the rod tip. You know, people, you know, if I taught someone how to cod fish, this would be the third thing I'd teach them, that just rod wide, you know, run it down that side. And I find that when we're fishing the bridges in the Yarra River for Mulwala, I do the same thing. Lure retrieve speed, that's a killer for cod fishing. It's one of the most important things. You can't go slow enough, but you've got to get the lure down first. So there's a range of techniques with casting the lure accurately, directing where you want it to go, and winding it properly. You know, cranking it down and then slowing it up real slow. Wait for that bump on the root ball. Wait for that kabang that happens straight after it. And ultimately, if you look at this gnarly old thing, not my head, this tree stump behind me, and if you think about fishing from the back of the boat with spinning gear in a tournament, a cod tournament, you're blocked out of most of the short stuff. So my teammate will be working the front 30 degrees each side as the stumps come past, and I'm fishing out 45 degrees at a much longer range. So I need to be really accurate. And this sequence here is the boat moving against the wind. The wind's blowing right to left. And I've got to get a lure around behind that tree, and you can see the branch that's broken off sitting behind the tree. And I've got to bring the lure back around the tree over the root ball, and then run it along the big branch that's broken off that's laying back to the stump. And if you can do that, then you win the Cod Nationals on the last day with a 78 centimetre cod on an 80mm lure, fishing spinning gear in 1.2 metres of water, which is pretty much all I fish. And you know, that's anyone can do that. You know, it's the same thing. And that's the message that I wanted to bring to people coming into cod fishing, is that it really is just about accurate casting and being out there, and it's not this, you know, amazingly hard thing to do, and it's really cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben, and as you no doubt know yourself, you love a bit of controversy, and you've certainly been causing a little bit recently for us at the VFA, so thank you for that. Just a quick reminder to send in any questions you have for our expert speakers. They'll be up here shortly in this beautifully arranged setting here that Trevelyan's spent a lot of time working on, and please send through your questions. Also, we've got our social media competition. So we've got 4 vouchers to give away from Trelly, and really excited to see what your social media posts are. Just remember to hashtag Conference 2022 in those. Our next guest speaker, Bill Classon. Bill heads up the team at AFN Fishing and Outdoors. He's one of the presenters on The Fishing Show on 7 Mate, and of course, the editor of Freshwater Fishing magazine. Bill, welcome.
Well, thanks for that. And it's been 3 long years before we had the last conference. And probably the first thing I'd like to say is when I started freshwater fishing back in 1987, which is a bit of a hard admission because I think it's a fair while ago, but really didn't have a cod fishery then. The only guy that I knew who caught Murray cod was Rod Harrison and Brian Pratt. And you really had to live in New South Wales to be able to get that. Back in 87, really it was all about trout, a few other things, caught a few Macquarie perch in the Yarra River at that stage, but Murray cod, really, really tough. I'd only ever caught one. Then in 1992, believe it or not, I heard there was some Murray cod in Lake Eildon, And I went up there in 93 and caught my first metre cod. And I thought, where did these come from? Had no idea. Now, at the time, fisheries wasn't very, very proactive about stocking Murray cod. It was actually illegal to stock Murray cod, correct? Yeah. South of the Divide. And yet these Murray cod were there in Lake Eildon. I think at the time there was a department called Fauna and Flora that were doing a study to see if Murray cod were there was a natural population of Murray cod in the Delatite River. Anyway, I won't go into it because the guys just asked me to talk about some of my cod techniques. But what it turned out took me about 15 years later to work out that those fish that we were catching in 92, 93, 94 were actually the fish that came out of Charlie Gruck. So they actually, when they closed down our first Murray cod breeding hatchery, they actually transferred and let those Murray cod go in the Delatite Arm. Hence why after 95 I couldn't catch one. But anyway, really the cod fishery that we're enjoying at the moment in Victoria is down to a whole group of people led by Travis. It's only recent, really only started in 2000 and really didn't get going until 2010. It's a recent thing. We take a lot for granted now, but believe you me, we didn't have it when I first started Freshwater Fishing magazine. So, I don't know how to use this. Right. Oh, there we go. So what I'm supposed to be talking about is my contribution to Murray cod fishing in the last 5 years, which I called Suspending Spinnerbaits. But before we do that, there's a common theme which Kate and Thomas Pinter talked about before, and that was about being organised for your cod fishing. And I thought I'd just do a little bit here first, which is be prepared, and it's just how I go cod fishing last 5 years. Had a lot to do with a mate of mine called Mick Caulfield, who showed me a few things, specifically the old zip-top bag. Oops. Uh-oh. What am I doing now? Here we go. So, basically, as Thomas said, you really need to get all your gear prepared before you go out in the water. So I actually have maybe 200 tackle boxes that I can chuck in the boat, rummage through and all the rest of it. But what I basically do, every day I go out cod fishing, I just take one, call it a day box. And inside that day box, I pre-rig everything. So I get organised, primed and prepared. I choose what to use. Actually think about what I'm going to use the day before, the week before I go fishing. Put it all in here, all in zip-top bags. I need some help from the technical department, I think. Here we go. Hang on. Okay, so I got the drop of it now anyway, I think. So basically all I'm talking about here is be prepared. So when I'm actually on the boat, I might have 15, 20 tackle boxes below deck, but I've only got one above deck. One of those big Plano boxes is what I use, rather than all the small ones. Put everything in there. That's typical of the ammo I sort of take out on a day's cod fishing. So everything there that I might need is in the box. That's my swim bait box. Put all the pre-rigged lures in plastic bags. You can easily see what you need, pull it out and use it when you need it. You're not rummaging through trying to think what you're doing. One of the other important things I do when I fish hard-bodied lures, I actually prefer to use a wide gape, short shank, super sharp hook, something like a KVD. Kevin Van Dam is a bass pro that I've fished with in America, and those guys that fish on that bass tournament scene in America, super prepared too. They don't go on the boat and then start thinking about what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. They've already prepared everything that they're going to use for the day, ready to go. So all my hard bodies pre-rigged with KVD hooks. Bit hard to get here in Australia in the big sizes, but you can get them in the States. The reason for that, hook sets just get better hookups. You've got about a 20 to 30% better chance of hooking up on a cod if it hits that lure. Likewise, surface lures, assist hooks, KVD on the back, into a zip-top bag, and then into your day box. You only need to just select 1 or 2 surface lures, 1 or 2 hard bodies, put them all in your day box. That's all you're going to need for the day. Even grubs, something like black grubs for golden perch, pre-rig them, bit of tinsel, assist hooks as trailers on the end, into a zip-top bag, and then into your day box. This is another one of my day boxes, my swim bait box. So same sort of deal, all pre-rigged. All of those lures that I'm using there, there's some sort of pre-rigging that I do to them, some sort of little tricks, changes or whatever. Put them in a bag and then just chuck them in your day box along with everything else that you may need. Then if you want to change up real quickly, you don't have to go searching through the bottom of your boat, through all your tackle boxes and start thinking about what you're going to use, because you've already thought about it. Now, finally, we're getting to what I was talking about, which is my spinnerbait day box. And my contribution to cod fishing, for want of a better word, is what I call a suspending spinnerbait. And we all know what spinnerbaits are. That's one of these things here. What these are is a big 1 ounce, basic 1 ounce spinnerbait, like so, that have been developed for pike fishing in Europe. So they're pretty hard to get. A couple of manufacturers, Molex make one, Savage make one, and a couple of the other guys make them as well. The difference between these spinnerbaits and your average spinnerbait is that they're a 1 ounce spinnerbait, very, very large Colorado blades, so you can work them very, very slowly. But the skirt on them has real bulk. So it's a heavier silicone skirt that probably most of us use on the spinnerbaits that we typically use here in Australia. And there's lots of mylar in it, there's lots of tinsel, and it's probably a triple tail on the silicone spinnerbait. And the reason for that is just to give it bulk and make it, even though it's a 1 ounce spinnerbait, when you cast it, you can just slowly roll it down so you can control whatever level you want to fish it at. The difference that I added to them is that the tails on them are not standard. Bit hard to get these big worm tails, so I tip them with a 12-inch to 9-inch to 7-inch worm tail. Again, bit hard to find in Australia, but you can get them pretty easily in America, and they're not all that expensive either. Sort of gear that you need to add to your spinnerbait is something like a big worm hook or a super sharp limerick hook, silicone lumo beads, which are then just cut in half to hold your hook on the spinnerbait, and then of course a big worm. Now that's a 10-inch worm bait from America, like a worm, you know. There it is there. So what you're going to have a presentation to a Murray cod. Thomas was talking about something big, you know, bigger the better to get these Murray cod going. I'm actually trying to even make some bigger ones. So you've got something there which is probably well over 13, 14 inches long, but it doesn't have the weight and the heaviness that you get with some of the big swim baits that you might be using. So that's my contribution to Murray cod. You've actually got to find a spinnerbait that has all this bulk, has weight, has a bit of size to it. Get your worms, add them onto it with a trailer. There's the finished rig. You just cut one of those lumo beads in half, thread your stinger hook on, just park it there with that, and away you go. And yes, I have caught quite a few cod on them. Not a meatery as yet, but I've caught cod in the Murrumbidgee, I've caught cod in Lake Eildon on them. They're my go-to lure. Basically, that lure there is probably what I prefer to use when I'm lure casting to Murray cod, whether I'm on Lake Eildon, Murrumbidgee River, wherever. Just love it. And one last thing is it's going to catch big cod just as easily as it's going to catch small cod. And then lastly, I spoke a little bit about spinnerbaits. Spinnerbaits in general I think are really underused. It's a good option to try on big cod because not a lot of guys are actually using big spinnerbaits on Murray cod in that casting situation. I'm talking about really, really large profile spinnerbaits like I'm using. So they make it a little bit different. Some of the cod get conditioned to the swim baits, get conditioned to the soft plastics, get conditioned to surface and all the rest of it. So, you know, spinnerbaits to me just gives me that little bit of an edge when I'm out fishing with a lot of the other guys who are tending to be more focused on swim baits and surface. And lastly, a little bit about skirts on your spinnerbaits. If you're replacing skirts, that skirt on the left-hand side is a normal skirt. It's called a layover skirt, silicone. You notice when you're using spinnerbaits, quite often if you just chuck them in your tackle box and you pull them out 12 months later, all the silicone peels off and falls off. You can actually buy preformed custom spinnerbaits like the one on the right. Those skirt, that's the sort of skirt you want to be putting on your spinnerbaits. Preformed, not layover, give you a perfect finish to your spinnerbait. So there you are. That's my contribution to Murray cod, and it's probably going to be about all I'm going to be able to do for the rest of my life. So thank you very much, and over to you, Chris.
That was great, Bill. Thank you so much. A couple of housekeeping matters. Just to let you know that lunch is coming shortly. So you'll be able to go to the toilet, have a lunch break very, very soon. We're going to cut the lunch break down from an hour down to half an hour to try to catch up on some of the extra talking that I've been doing and putting us behind. But before we go to lunch, we're going to hear from a couple of our Women in Recreational Fishing Network leaders, and then we're going to have a Q&A session. So please, if you've got any questions for Bill, send them through on the app via your phone, the QR code on your table. So there's some really exciting things happening in the Women in Recreational Fishing Network. And we've got Catelyn and Karen here, two of our leaders, and they're going to come up and share the achievements of the WIRF network over the last 12 months and what some of the exciting plans for the future are. Welcome.
Thank you, Chris, for the introduction, and thank you to the VFA for inviting us back here once again. I think this is my fourth time up on the stage, so I do love getting to come back here and speak with you all about the developments on the WIRF network and what's been happening, and this year I'm joined by Catelyn as well. So the snapshot for this year, there's been a huge amount of growth in the WIRF network. It was launched just coming up to 4 years ago, so we've got our 4th birthday celebrations coming up really soon. But we have now got 3,400 members. So in the last year, we've seen about 1,000 member growth, which is amazing to see. And we're seeing more of those ladies all the time out there on the water, which is wonderful. But the WIRF network always aims to inspire and encourage females to get them active and participating in fishing. We have 27 dedicated WIRF leaders spread throughout the state. We've got people who are dedicated freshwater scene. We've also got people who are dedicated to the salt. And each leader has strengths in their own abilities and connections within the industries. Just a little bit about myself, I suppose. So I'm a dedicated freshwater angler. I focus on Murray cod the most. I've been fishing for about 6 years, really dedicated to the scene, and yeah, I just love getting out there and chasing the Murray cod. I'm still looking for my meatery. I've hooked them a few times and they've gotten off, so we'll keep going with the drive for it. I'm a mum of 3 girls, and they come out fishing with us so many times. So probably we go out probably every week. They're probably with us 3 of those 4 weeks of the month. The girls absolutely love it. There are challenges having your kids going out fishing. They're constantly wanting food. If you're not seeing any action from the Murray Cod, it can be a bit trying, but we always try and integrate them in. So my girls, Piper, I don't know which one's the laser. This is Piper here. She caught her first on the lure the other day at Ngambie, and she was absolutely so stoked. Eden in the middle, she has just taken to it. So she's caught a Murray Cod. She's caught lots of yellow bellies. And then my eldest daughter, Olivia, she's just about to turn 10, but she gets out there all the time casting. She's caught her first surface cod last year, and I just love seeing the joy on their face. And really, for me, this is what fishing's all about, building up the next generation. And I can see I've got 3 new WIRF leaders that are going to be there and pushing for the drive to get more women into the sport. I didn't want to go to that yet. For me, being a WIRF leader has been huge. Joining it in Cast 1 4 years ago, I've had a lot of opportunities to grow and develop. So about 3 years ago, I started working for Steve Trelfall as the manager of the Bendigo store. So out of that, we've done a whole lot of work around the space of females within the store, and we've made a really female-friendly store that ladies can come in and talk to us. All the staff that I've got there, they always approach ladies in that store. We're not just expecting the ladies going in there to buy a gift voucher for their husband. We're actually treating them as anglers because we know there are a lot of amazing female anglers out there. I also had the opportunity to go on as an ambassador for Go Fish Ngambie, Australia's premier freshwater fishing competition. And over the past couple of years, we've done some huge things, which I'm going to touch on now, or very shortly. But I run a Women in Recreational Fishing event at the event on a Friday night, and we've just had a big one, which I'm going to show you in a second. And the last thing that's just happened, I've actually started in an editor role with Social Fishing and Rees. So I'm working with him behind the scenes. He is dedicated to educating freshwater anglers, and I'm just helping him out, pull it all together and allow him to do extra things. But we'll jump into what happened at Go Fish Ngambie. Now, here today, this is about a 2.5-year dream, this actual event, and I am so excited to see so many ladies here and some guys here supporting their wives, their sisters, their children in following their pursuit of fishing. So we want to welcome you all. We are going to move into the clinic, so we have got a fairly jam-packed event for you. So the next hour is all focused on you upskilling and learning new things to implement in your fishing. Hope you learn lots. Enjoy the event.
WIRF's a really cool community because, you know, for women in fishing, there hasn't always been this sense of connection. And I think the great part about WIRF is that it's like a ready-made family. When you join the WIRF crew, there's so many people who are like ready to welcome you with open arms, and everyone's really supportive. So if you're like new to fishing or you don't have many friends in the industry, like WIRF's literally like a ready-made family.
So that's just a snapshot of what we did. It was a huge event. We had 150 ladies come along with their children, and we had quite a lot of guys. So I'm estimating we had about 200 people there. And we had so many stakeholders involved. So Daiwa Australia came on as a huge supporter of the event. They actually put that footage all together for us. Yeti Australia, I'm a bit privileged being a part of the shop, and I have these great relationships with these companies, and they're backing us 110% in what we're doing, because they can see there is such a growth and need to get more women involved in fishing. And when we get those women involved in fishing, we get the kids involved with fishing. And there's nothing better. We had the education team from the VFA doing activities with the kid. We had a DYFC event, which is Daiwa Young Fishing Club, and you would have seen the lures there, and the kids were colouring them in, and it's just capturing those kids and the growth, because as you guys know, they are the future of fishing, and if we can get to them now, that's awesome. But yeah, I do have to say a big thank you to the VFA, because they are behind that as well. So I'll go on to the next part. So we're going to do a quick snapshot on the achievements. These are our achievements in the last 12 months. So media. So we have got some of our leaders going on TV. They've had multiple episodes filmed for iFish, Ozfish TV. We have ladies doing podcast episodes and spreading the word of the WIRF network, but it's not just the WIRF network, it's spreading the news of women in fishing. And that's the main thing that we're trying to get over. Articles in magazines. We have one of our WIRF leaders now every week on Talking Fishing program. And Cara, she does a cooking segment every week as part of it as well. Ambassadors for brands. So more and more of our ladies are being recognised not only for their fishing skills, but their leadership abilities. So we've got quite a number of ladies who are now being picked up as ambassadors for different companies and are spreading the word out there. Committees. So we've got quite a number of ladies on Snob Creek Hatcheries boards, running their own, fishing clubs. So the one in the middle, we have got a whole bunch of our WIRF leaders and other ladies actually running which one is it? It's one of the ones, can't remember which one it is. I think it's Albert Park Fishing Club, but it's headed up by one of our WIRF leaders, and she's got a whole bunch of other WIRF leaders there backing her up behind that. Also, we had a number of our leaders as part of the National Gone Fishing Day Committee as well, along with other boards and committees, including a lot of the VFA ones, including the Murray Codference group and the statewide roundtable. And we've also had a lot of opportunities for girls to be a part of speaking engagements. So the World Fisheries Congress meeting back in September last year, we had Tiff and Nikki represent the WIRF network in that. I'll pass over to Catelyn.
Thanks, Karen. Hi, everybody. I am obviously Catelyn. My fishing origin story is a little plain. My partner would go fishing without me, and I didn't like being left at home, so now I go fishing. So my fishing journey compared to Karen's has been a little bit different in that I literally just started fishing, and now here I am. So I thought instead I would share with you a few of the things that have changed about my life that should perhaps encourage maybe some of the blokes out in the audience to get your wives, daughters, granddaughters, the females in your life fishing. The first one is that just about every spare weekend that we are not working now, we are fishing. Yesterday we fished. The weekend before last we fished. The weekend before that we also fished. You get the point. All of our spare time is spent fishing now, and it's not staying home to mow the lawn or to do the house chores. We go fishing at every opportunity. Likewise, our holidays are now all fishing based. Whenever we go away to see the world, to go fishing, and we see family as a secondary, including our honeymoon, which will also be a fishing trip. And the third one that I also like to share is that every single one of my gifts for birthday or Christmas for probably at least the last 3 or 4 years have all been fishing related and have most likely come from a tackle shop. So if you want to make your gift buying a lot easier, and if you want to go to your favourite stores and have a good excuse to spend money there, teach your wife to fish. So these are just a few of my fish here. We spent a bit of time in Darwin, and I was lucky enough to fish up there, and then And then obviously we've been into the freshwater scene now that we're down here in Victoria. And Murray Codfishing has obviously become a big part of our lives now, and that consumes most of our time in Victoria. But what I really wanted to talk to you guys about was what's coming up for the WIRF network in the next 6 to 12 months. We've recently launched the Instagram page for the WIRF network. I just double checked then, we are closing in on 700 followers. So really the Instagram page is a space for everybody to get involved. So it's not just women only. So if you are obviously not a woman, you can follow us along there and get involved. Like, we want to see pictures of women fishing from all different backgrounds. So if your daughter's fishing, if your wife's fishing, she's not on social media or she's not confident enough to post her own pictures, we want to see them. So share them with us on Instagram. We are super excited to see them. So follow us over there, share us with your pictures. Like, we just love seeing more women in fishing. Oops, cooked it. So some really cool educational programs have popped up through really the initiatives of our WIRF leaders. So obviously Karen spoke a bit about all her work at Go Fish Ngambie, which is obviously a great initiative. I was there this year, and to see so many women enjoying themselves and learning in the crowd was just like absolutely unbelievable, and it's a really great initiative. The other one we have up on the board here in the top left-hand corner is Cara Cummings and her great work setting up a fishing program in schools. So that's that kids fishing program, and it's just absolutely unreal to see kids in primary school even just getting involved in fishing who had never seen a fish before that wasn't dead in the fish shop, that they can actually have a go and learn the skills, because they're really the future of our industry. So the next big project for us actually in a more grassroots scene is called WIRF Locals. So this is a really exciting initiative where the WIRF leaders themselves will be running some more events on the ground for women in regional areas. So Karen and I are both the leaders for the North Central group. We have some other WIRF leaders in the crowd back here who are running some of the other groups. But the idea is that to really drive the engagement at a grassroots level, that we will set up these events so women can come and join us and learn things in environments that are less daunting, or it's not fronting up to a major event or, you know, a competition where there is a lot of pressure. It's just an opportunity for women to get together and learn, and also meet some like-minded fishers. So what's coming up for us? So we recently, you might have seen on social media, that we have done the second round of our WIRF survey. So when WIRF was first created, it was off the back of the first survey that basically said we need more for women. So we've just completed the second round of surveying that will inform our next round of strategy. So our new strategy launch will be happening on International Women's Day, which I believe is next week, March 8th. So that also coincides with WIRF's 4th birthday. So obviously 4 years now that we've been running, we've absolutely kicked some great goals, and it's super exciting to see. So we will both be having an online event and an in-person event for that one as well. Very soon we are also having all of the leaders convene in Eildon for a 3-day workshop where it will be sort of like learning and finally meeting each other, because a lot of us haven't seen each other in person, and doing a lot of professional development, which will be really exciting. And a few of the other programs that we have coming up as well, obviously Sisterhood of the Roving Rod, which is going to be really exciting, where we have a rod that is going to travel around to Victoria, and where one person will catch a fish on this rod and then we will pass it on to the next one. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be sharing all of these exciting things all over our socials, so please jump on if you're not in the Facebook group. It's search Women in Recreational Fishing, or at WIRF Network on Instagram. So that's it for us for the WIRF update. We've got 53 seconds left, so I've absolutely nailed it. But look, to be honest, like, we're so privileged as women in fishing, and as Victorian women in particular, that we have such great support from the Victorian fisheries. You know, we are relatively new to Victoria, and to see that recreational fishing has so much support in this state is really heartening, because this is genuinely the future for us, and it's really exciting to see that women really have a strong place in the industry. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really informative, and it's really exciting from the VFA's point of view to see one half of the population of Victoria coming into recreational fishing, and not only coming into it, leading recreational fishing. We have Gail, the board of the VFA, the board chair of the VFA. We have Melissa Horn as the Minister for Fishing and Boating. We have 50% female representation on the board of VR Fish now, and we have Joanne Butterworth Gray as the independent chairperson of Seafood Industry Victoria. It's fantastic to see. We're going to make a slight amendment to the agenda now, and we are going to organise a half an hour lunch break now, and then I'll invite our guest speakers to come back for a Q&A session. Just to let you know, there's lots of VFA staff around at the moment. We're wearing these sort of blue shirts with logos on it. If you do happen to see someone who looks like Travis Stowling in a shirt that doesn't look like one of these, that's Travis's twin brother, Jason. Feel free to go and direct any of your abuse or angst or upset about what we're doing at fisheries to Jason. He's very happy to take your questions. Thanks. See you back here in half an hour.